Okay, so getting back into our coverage over the X-Men, we are going to dive into Peter David's first Wolverine story, a six-part story arc called The Johanna Stone. And honestly, this is a great story, but it also begins the process of Wolverine giving up the whole patch identity. So let me explain. When it came to Wolverine and the rest of the X-Men, they had given up their lives on live television in front of the whole world to save the world from the adversary. And so the world believed that the X-Men had died at that moment, not knowing that the X-Men were brought back to life soon after they had given up their lives. They were brought back to life by Lady Roma. Now, when it came to the X-Men, they believed it would be better for them to hide in the shadows, to continue to have the world believe that they are dead, but also their family and friends, so that they'll be able to go after different enemies. And so when it came to Wolverine, he continued that idea and took up the name better known as Patch while he was in Madripoor. But this story arc is going to get rid of that to begin the process of Logan just being Logan, just being Wolverine. And so getting into today's story arc, we do pick up in a museum where we do see a couple of guys trying to break inside of it to grab a certain kind of jewel. Now, while trying to retrieve it, they have to make sure that security is no longer around. And so once you have the guard walk away, they try to grab the jewel, except right when they put their hands on it, well, they realize it's a fake. And the question is now, where is the real one? Now, the guard does come back and the guard tries to stop them, but unfortunately, the guard is jumped by those guys. And we kind of find out the robbers are vampires. Now we jump over to Wolverine. And you have Wolverine in Madripoor just minding his business at a bar until he is confronted by a character known as Archie. Now, when it comes to Archie, we have talked about him before a couple of videos ago. Archie is a pilot who works in the country alongside with Tiger, one of the two crime lords in the country. Now, when it comes to Archie, he does express that he is very upset because his brother has been called into court to prove that he is incompetent. You see, when it comes to Archie and Bert, their father died a few years ago, but after dying, all the money went to Bert. But you also have other family members who believe they have a right to that money. And so over the years, they have been trying to prove that Bert is incompetent, that he does not have the right to hold onto that money. It should be given to somebody else. And when it comes to Archie, he was called by Bert to come back home to San Francisco to come to the next court hearing to help prove that his brother is mentally okay. Now, when it comes to Bert, there is a problem. Not really, but to other people, it is. He loves to cosplay. After watching a movie or reading a book, he likes to pretend that he is a certain character. The problem is sometimes he goes too far pretending to be those certain characters. But either way, other family members are trying to prove that Bert is not mentally okay because he does that. And so it's up to Archie to prove that his brother is okay. And so when it comes to Archie, he wants Logan to go with him back home to San Francisco. He believes that Logan could possibly help prove that Bert is okay. Now, while you have the two guys talking, Jessica Drew, the original Spider-Woman, overhears the conversation. Now remember, by this point, she was no longer Spider-Woman. She was just your PI in Madripoor, but she overhears that Wolverine and also Archie might go back home to San Francisco where she is from, and she wants to go. And so you have all three characters agree to head back over there. And so while you have Wolverine, Jessica, and also Archie arrive at the home of Bert, Bert shows that he's very happy to see his brother, but he is acting more normal than he usually does. And so for Archie, he feels like there is something going on with his brother, but he has no idea what it could possibly be. But you have Archie tell Bert that Logan and Jessica are here to help prove that Bert is okay, that he's not incompetent. And so you have Archie tell his brother, you better be there tomorrow morning for the court hearing. And while you have our heroes leave, we see Bert go to a certain drawer. And once he opens it up, we see him holding some kind of jewel. But now we have to shift our focus over to Jessica Drew, and we see her go to her old office. You see, before she had left for Madripoor, back in San Francisco, she was a PI, a private investigator. Now, with her being back in her old office, she is confronted by the owner of the museum we saw at the very beginning of this video. And you have the owner coming to her and asking for her help to figure out who in the world has stole the jewel. Because he tells her, we thought we had the real one and we thought we had it locked up very well, but some random thugs, or vampires actually, try to steal the jewel, to only find out, as we did as well, that we had the fake one. Somebody took the real one and we have no idea who. And so he wants to hire Jessica to find out who has the real jewel. And right now, it looks like it's Bert. Now we jump over to the following day, and now it's time for the court hearing, except Bert is not there at all. And when it comes to Archie and Logan, they are getting somewhat concerned of where Bert could possibly be. But then out of nowhere, Bert busts through the window of the courthouse on a horse. That's just wild to say. And you have everyone wondering what in the world is going on. They believe that once again that he is cosplaying, or believing that he is a certain person. But before they are able to question him, he tells them, no guys, I'm on the run. And you have Logan realize, oh my God, this man is right. He is on the run. And out of nowhere, you have waves of vampires trying to attack Bert, and now everyone else in the courthouse. And so as we dive into the second chapter, well, we pick up with vampires just attacking everyone in the courtroom, but especially Bert. Now the judge, he's freaking out because this was not on his plans at all for the day. To have some random man just bash through the window being chased by vampires, and now the vampires are trying to attack him as well. But you have the judge being able to escape, get into his room to call the cops. Now, when it comes to Bert, he tries again to get away from the vampires. And you have Jessica get on the horse along with him to kind of learn more about what in the world is going on, but to also protect Bert from the waves of vampires. Now, some vampires, they do stay behind to fight against Wolverine and also Archie. But once you have those two guys being able to take those vampires down, you have Archie and Wolverine go out of their way to steal a police car to chase after Bert and Jessica, who are being chased after vampires. And so then we get a quick page of our mysterious bad guy hiding in the shadows. Now, our mysterious bad guy is holding what seems to be the incomplete version of the Johanna Stone. He only needs a few more pieces, and most likely that means one of those pieces could be with Bert, or possibly the final piece is with Bert. But either way, he's waiting for the right opportunity to get the final piece away from Bert. And so we jump back over to our heroes, really more Jessica and Bert, because you have Jessica as Bert. Okay, dude, why in the world are the vampires coming after you for? Like, what did you do? And you have Bert say, because I have a piece of the Johanna Stone. Now, here's the thing, because he tells us that he was the one who stole that piece from the museum. He heard that followers to a particular character known as Baal was trying to reassemble the actual Gehenna stone. And so one of the final pieces was being kept in that museum. Bert felt like he had the right to protect it. So he did his thing, stole the piece from the museum, and now you have the vampires trying to come after him. Now, we still have no idea who Baal is, but that explains why the vampires are chasing him. But now you have Jessica, Bert, and also Archie and Logan being able to get rid of the vampires for the time being and being able to regroup. But the rest of the group wants to know, who the heck is Baal? Now, as we dive into the third chapter, we jump back over to Madripoor, where we pick up with the Princess Bar. Now, the Princess Bar is the usual bar that Logan as Patch usually works out of. But we pick up with the owner of the bar, and that would be O'Donnell. Now, when it comes to O'Donnell, he realized that two guys, twins actually, had walked into the bar, Gary and Larry, and they're going to be very important for this chapter alone. Now, when it comes to Larry and Gary, they're really rude to O'Donnell and also the bartender. But the reason why, because they think they're about to make a whole lot of money once they are able to sell a certain piece of jewelry. But getting back over to our heroes are still being chased after by the police now. Vampires, they're long gone. But the police, they're kind of like, hey, we want some answers. We saw all you guys in the courtroom. You guys stole a police car and did a whole lot other things across the city. You need to answer for those crimes. But you have Logan going out of his way to make sure that they are able to get away. But after doing that, you now have Logan want to know, what kind of mess did him and the rest of the gang get involved in thanks to Bert? And you have Bert say, let me tell you about the one demon that God wanted gone so badly. Now we jump back over to the Princess Bar, where we pick up with Jerry and also Gary. Now the two twins begin to fight against each other over the piece of jewel they're currently holding on to. And this is just a small sample of us learning more about the Gehenna stone. But while you have the two twins being able to calm down, they then ask O'Donnell for a room to rent for the night, and he says, hey, I do have one, and they go their way into their room. Now we jump back over to Bert, and when it comes to Bert, he begins to explain more about the Gehenna stone and also the demon known as Baal as well. You see, when it comes to Bert, he tells us back in the ancient times in the land of Gehenna, you had this demon known as Baal that also had followers as well. But Baal and his followers would do all these different kinds of demonic acts, and because of that, God got tired of them and sent in his legendary warrior to kill off that demon, and the warrior was able to kill him off, except the demon body began to release its essence into the world, and his followers created a stone, better known as the Gehenna stone. And so they were able to grab the demon's essence and put it inside the actual stone. Now God's legendary warrior came back again to get the stone, and once he did, he broke the stone into a bunch of pieces and spread them across the world. And now you have new followers going out of their way to collect those different pieces and being able to reassemble the actual Gehenna stone to hopefully bring back their god, Baal, the demon that God tried his best to get rid of. Now, when it comes to Bert, he tells the rest of the group that in the last 2 years, he began to hear that different people were able to find different pieces of the stone, except after a while, each of those pieces were stolen by somebody else. And so that told Bert that somebody or a group of people are trying to reassemble the Gehenna stone. Now, when it comes to Bert, we do get another example of what happens when someone is currently holding onto a piece of the actual stone. they become very protective over it because the rest of the group, Logan, Jessica, and Archie, they want to see what Bert is currently holding on to, but he does not want to show them at all, to the point where it seems that he would actually attack them to actually protect the piece that he is currently holding on to. Now, when it comes to our heroes, they want to head back over to Madripoor, except when they arrive at the hangar to get Archie's plane, well, you have Logan realize there's somebody hiding inside the actual hangar, and then our heroes are attacked by a group of vampires. Now, these are not your usual vampires because they are able to walk in broad daylight. Now, when it comes to Logan, he's also confronted by Ball himself. Now, you're probably wondering, how in the world is Ball here? Well, let me explain. You see, when it comes to Ball, once you had a few pieces being able to reassemble, he was able to come back to life, but he needed a host. Now, he's not back to full power just yet because the stone has not been reassembled completely yet, but once it is, he'll be able to reabsorb his lost power and be all powerful once again. But currently he's not that powerful, but still a challenge for Logan. And so you have Logan trying his best to fight against Ball, but at the same time he can't use his powers like he wants to because again, the world believes that Wolverine is currently dead, and so he has to fight different than he usually does, and unfortunately he does lose the battle. But you have Ball being able to grab Bert's piece and then tell his followers to retreat, and they were able to get on a plane to get the heck out of there. Now Bert is very upset about the idea that he lost his piece of the stone, but that shows if you are holding on to a certain piece of the actual stone, you become very possessive over it. And Bert is very upset that he lost that piece and he wants it back. But when it comes to the rest of the heroes, they just want to stop Ball before he's able to become all powerful once again. But now we have to jump over to the Princess Bar because we once again pick up with those twins we saw earlier, except this time you're having the twins fight in their hotel room over the piece of jewel that they have currently in their possession. Now their fight, it does end up with both of them killing each other. Now with that happening, blood begins to seep through the floor into the lower level, right in front of O'Donnell. And once he sees the blood, he freaks out and goes upstairs to find out the two guys he just gave the room to earlier had killed themselves. But he also sees in the puddle of blood is a piece of the Johanna stone. And now we already know what could possibly happen to O'Donnell because he might become very possessive over it. And so we did pick go at our heroes on Archie's plane, falling behind Ball's plane to hopefully get the jump on them, but to also get the stone back as well. Now, when it comes to Logan, he does go to the back of Archie's plane to retrieve a certain bag that he always carries around. Now, this begins the process of Logan getting rid of the whole Patch identity. And so we're going to see him wear his actual Wolverine suit for the first time in this actual series. But we have to jump back over to the Princess Bar because now we pick up with O'Donnell once again. And you have O'Donnell with Lindsay, and you have the two characters talking to Ty. Now remember, Ty is the sheriff of the police department in Madripoor. But when it comes to Ty, he wants to know what exactly happened. Now, O'Donnell tells them, hey, those two guys, they walked in, they asked for a room, they went to the room, they got into an argument, then a fight, and then killed each other. But I did find this piece of jewel in their pool of blood. Now, when it comes to Ty, he wants the piece handed over to him. But you have O'Donnell saying no. But O'Donnell is acting the same way Bert did earlier. Very possessive over the piece of stone that he's currently holding on to. But now we have to shift our focus back over to our heroes, and we get into another action section because you do have our heroes still following behind Ball's plane, except the followers of Ball realize that they're being followed, and so they begin to shoot at our hero's plane. Now, when it comes to Jessica, she automatically jumps out of her plane to land on Ball's plane to hopefully take out the followers who are trying to shoot up her plane. Now, while doing that, you have Archie trying his best to continue to fly his plane without getting hit by the bullets. But then you have Logan walk back into the front part of the plane, revealing that he is wearing his Wolverine suit now, and also telling everyone on the plane, hey, I'm Wolverine. I never died, I've been alive, but hey, let me go ahead and help out Jessica take down those followers. And so you have Logan also jump out of their plane to land on Ball's plane to take out the followers. But we have to jump back over to the Princess Bar, where we get another example of what happens when somebody is actually near a piece of the Gehenna Stone. Yes, you heard that right, when they are near the piece, because usually we have seen so far, if you are holding on to a piece, you become very possessive. But now we're seeing other people are being affected even though they don't actually possess a piece of the stone. So for example, Lindsay McCabe, because she was near O'Donnell, who was holding on to a piece of the stone, she now wants the stone just as bad as he does, except she's trying her best to make a deal with him, saying, listen, all I want to do is see the stone. And if you were able to show me, then I will give you some, some fun time in the bedroom, which he does accept very easily. But getting back over to our heroes, really more Logan and also Jessica, while you have the two heroes fighting on the plane, she does reveal that she always knew that Patch was Wolverine, to kind of show that the whole idea of trying to pretend to be somebody else honestly did not really work out for him like he was hoping it would. And so he's kind of like, if she found out who I was, I wonder who else knew that Patch was actually Wolverine. Either way, you do have the two heroes being able to work together to take down the followers, but to also destroy their plane as well. Now, Logan knows that Ball is not dead because as the plane went down in flames, he could see Ball's face, and Ball's face is just laughing at Logan to tell Logan, listen, because I have most of the pieces of the actual stone, most of my power back, something like this could not easily kill me off. And now you have Ball also kind of hinting at the idea of the possibility that even God's warriors can't even stop him this time. But either way, Logan knows that Ball is going to continue to find the rest of the pieces of the actual stone. But getting back over to the Princess Bar, we pick up with O'Donnell and Lindsay after they had their fun time with one another. Except out of nowhere, you have a bunch of guys just barge into the room. Now, here's the thing. These guys actually work for the Prince of Madripoor, who also wants the last piece of the Gehenna Stone. Now, as we dive into the next chapter, we see some time has passed by, and we pick up with Wolverine now arriving back in Madripoor. Now, once he does arrive, well, he sees Lindsay being attacked or really assaulted by a group of police officers who work for Ty. Now, Ty is also there as well, but you have Wolverine jump in to protect Lindsay. Now, when it comes to Ty, he has no idea that Patch is Wolverine. No one ever told him that Wolverine was Patch. But either way, this is another example of what happens when you are someone who is near the actual stone. Because now you also the stone just as bad as the person who is currently holding on to it. And when it came to Ty, he was near O'Donnell when O'Donnell had his piece of the stone. And ever since that moment, the kind of urge inside of Ty kept growing and growing, wanting the actual stone in his hand. Now, after saving Lindsay from the police officers in Ty, you have Wolverine change back into his regular clothes and go over to the Princess Bar. Now, this is the moment where Wolverine finds out that everyone knew that he was Wolverine. The idea of him being Patch was technically pointless. Now, when it comes to O'Donnell, Archie, and Lindsay, Logan can tell they're acting really different. Really more O'Donnell and also Lindsay. Archie is not acting weird at all, but he does also walk into the Princess Bar. And when it comes to Logan, he wants to have a better understanding in what is exactly happening to Bert and other people who have been close to the actual stone. Now, when it comes to their conversation, it's really used as a way to catch us up with what happened at the end of the last chapter. You see, when it came to O'Donnell and Lindsay, when they were getting their freak on, well, you did have the men who worked for the prince barge in the room to take the piece of the stone that O'Donnell had. Now, we do get another example of what happens when you are near the stone. You become very possessive. And when it comes to Lindsay, she wanted to keep the stone in their possession, but she never had possession of the stone. Now, after you have the men of the prince being able to actually take the stone, we jump back to the present day, where you have Logan wondering what kind of stone did O'Donnell have. And so he goes out of his way to draw a picture of what the stone looked like. And we can now confirm that O'Donnell did have a piece of the Johanna stone. Now, while you had the three guys talking, well, they're confronted by Ty, again, the sheriff of the police department, who is trying his best to get the stone in his possession. Now, it does lead into a small battle, but at the end of the battle, you have Ty tell Logan and the rest of the crew that the prince does have the final piece of the stone. And when it comes to Logan, that is very concerning because the most powerful man in Madripoor now has the final piece of the Johanna stone. And sooner or later, Belle is gonna go after the prince to get that final piece. Now, Bert and also Jessica are both there in Madripoor as well. Now, when it comes to Bert, while walking around, he does hear a woman scream for help, and she's being attacked by more followers of Ball. Now, when it comes to Bert, he goes out of his way to save the woman, but he does struggle. Now, luckily for Bert, Jessica was there to help out. Now, one of the followers is able to get away. And when it comes to Bert and Jessica, it's the perfect time to follow that follower to hopefully find Ball and to hopefully stop all this mess that is currently going on in Madripoor. But they're also heading towards the palace that is currently owned by the prince. Now, something we have to remember, when it comes to Jessica Drew, she actually works for the prince in a way. You see, when it came to the prince, he had two crime lords fighting for control over crime in his country. But he realized that both crime lords had a different weakness that the other could actually overcome. But he wanted to make sure that both crime lords stay in their place. And so he had hired Jessica to be a PI, but have her office right in the middle of the two territories of the two crime lords. And so she does work for the prince. And so she was able to easily access the actual palace. Except when she walks into the main room, she finds the prince, but the prince is having drinks with Ball, and currently they're about to make a deal with one another. Now, when it comes to the prince and Ball, they have a deal with one another. You see, when it comes to Ball, he's trying his best to buy the last piece of the actual stone he needs to recreate the Johanna stone from the prince. Now, for the prince, he was having a good conversation with Ball, but until you have Ball actually say, hey, I want to buy the last piece off of you, Well, to the prince, you're no longer evil. That you have to go out of your way to buy something that you want that bad, you're not as bad as the world believes that you are. Now, when it comes to Ball, he's not trying to kill off the prince at all. Matter of fact, he says, how about this? If you give me the last piece, I'll give you the money, but I'll also give you the ability of immortality. Now, again, for the prince, it's kind of like, that's a good deal, but I want to say no. Now, the reason why the prince is saying no, because he's also being affected by the Johanna stone. He also wants to keep it in his possession. Now, when it comes to Ball, he's kind of like, you know what? Listen, y'all can't even stop me at all. So he goes and grabs the assistant to the prince and takes his hand and pulls out the piece out of the guy's gut. The prince had his assistant eat the final piece of the Johanna stone, and Ball's all like, well, even though he did, it's not going to stop me, and pulls it right out of the guy's gut. Now, the story does get wrapped up very quickly here, because once you have Ball being able to have all the different pieces of the Johanna stone in his possession, he's now back to full power like he was many years ago. Now, when it comes to Wolverine, he still tries his best to actually stop the guy, but unfortunately, he is struggling. This is a very powerful being. Now, luckily for Wolverine, Bert arrives, and Bert is able to get the stone away from Ball to bring his power back down. Now, unfortunately for Bert and Wolverine, you have Ball being able to once again grab the stone and go back to its full power state. But right after he grabs it, Wolverine's able to use his claws to shatter the stone once again. And of course, that means Ball is no longer able to go toe-to-toe with Wolverine. And you then have Wolverine being able to stab Ball right in the chest. Now, as the battle goes on, our two characters go out of the palace and they fall into the water below the actual palace. And once you have both characters wash up on shore, Ball dies right next to Wolverine. And when it comes to our heroes, they truly believe that Ball will not be able to come back to life this time. And the reason why, because remember, the first time Ball died by the hands of that great warrior of God, his essence was flown into the actual stone by his followers. But this time, when it came to Wolverine, he had shattered the stone, but also killed off Ball. But none of his followers were able to make sure that his essence had flown back into the stone this time. And so when it comes to Wolverine, he believes that the spirit of Ball had finally returned, most likely back to hell. And so that wraps up this storyline right here. And again, I really did like this story a lot. It was a great one written by Peter David. But now we are done with Wolverine for the time being when it comes to our coverage over X-Men comics. It's now time for us to dive back into the other X titles like X-Factor, Excalibur, New Mutants, and X-Men. But guys, this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.